Good evening,
And there's
everyone.
David.
They're just popped. Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October monthly version of the GMNC's monthly meeting. My name is Fatima Ali Salam. I'm the chair for the GMNC. And we have this evening, we're going to be having the Boston Planning and Development Agency present its draft plan, Mattapan plan. But before we start on that, we're just going to do one quick thing of the some housekeeping to start with. So and the first thing we're going to go through is the committees. So if I could start with Matthew, if you could just do quickly for the Public Services Committee, please.
Of course. Thanks, Fatima. So last month we had an awesome conversation centered around Itasca Street and potential transportation traffic calming related improvements. We'll have an update on that topic when we meet tomorrow night. And we're also going to spend some time tomorrow night organizing what promises to be the first that I am aware of anyway, neighborhood-wide tag sale that's going to be held at the Mildred. The date is going to be October 15th. That's a Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, coming right up. And a rain date being the following Saturday. So get that on everybody's calendars. If you'd like to participate and sell, have a spot to sell whatever you have laying around that you've been looking forward to finding a new home for, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat for you. And if you just want to come, it's going to be 9 a.m. start, running till 1 p.m. is the plan on Saturday. The 15th, again, in case we didn't catch that. So I will put my email in the chat, and I also want to give a big shout out to David Holness, who has done a big share of the planning work. David's been doing an awesome job, so thank you very much. And that's all I got, Steve. And I will, Kenya, I'll send you the flyer as well.
Okay. And Matthew, just one thing, is the Public Services Committee, is this still tomorrow or has it been rescheduled?
Yeah, it will be tomorrow. I just need to send out the meeting invitation.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
We just have three quick go-throughs actually for the GMNC zoning recommendations. And after I read each one, I'll take a quick vote from the GMNC board members. The first is the underground legacy at 1379 to 1385 Blue Hill Avenue. I only ask that Matthew will be refraining from voting on this one, as he is part of the design team. It is a proposed cannabis dispensary business. The recommendation from the zoning committee is that we propose that they go back to those who are listed as supporters and separate out the feedback from the supporters. Currently, there is a discrepancy being reported by both the Mattapan Community Health Center and the BPL Mattapan branch libraries. There's also concerns about there being the same entry and exiting for patrons for monitoring at the site. And we ask that they go back and review the physical layout to see whether or not they can have a separate exit from the entry. Could I get a vote on the recommendation, whether or not there's agreement on that? Pam?
I'm in favor.
Chad?
I'm in favor.
David,
Agree with the recommendations.
thank you. Who else is there? Michelle? Michelle White? Oh, Michelle can't hear you. I don't think she can. Must have something wrong with the audio. Who else is on ours? Pam, do you see who else is on the call? I don't want to miss somebody.
I think you covered everyone that's here.
Okay. I don't see who's on. Okay. Okay, the next one is for Citizens Bank at 1160 Blue Hill Avenue. It's represent and for 7 Frontenac Street and 11 Frontenac Street. For the recommendations, we ask that there be more explicit signage for both the entry and exit, as there is both high foot traffic in the area and there's concern for pedestrian safety as the entry and the exit both come from Blue Hill Avenue. We also ask that there in night deposit box that there be better lighting, considering it is outside. There is also a recommendation that was a formal trash dumpster area, that the redesign of the area be to promote safety, as it does in the designs that were given, they look a little obscured. And that right now, today, they had gone and submitted, I'm sorry, as of last Friday late, they submitted community benefits packages and how they have interacted with the community at different locations. And we'll review that. And once that's reviewed with the nearby neighborhood associations, as well as the larger group, we'll send over a recommendation directly to them to see what improvements, if any, need to be made. So is there a, can I get a vote to say, to go along with that or to against? Are we all in favor?
I'm in
In
favor.
favor.
Fatima.
Aye.
Chad? David?
In favor.
Okay, Michelle? If you can. Maybe she can type. Oh, I see she's on with it. All right. The last is for the Build a Life Legacy, also known as the POT. It's for 536, 538 River Street in Mattapan. There are concerns about the vehicular turning abilities. There was one narrow entrance for both entry and exit. If that can be reviewed again by the proponent, otherwise the application looks good. Is that agreeable? Can I get it in favor, or what say, is anybody opposed?
I support the recommendation, Fatima.
Okay. Matthew, are you going to?
I'm
Are you
gonna
gonna,
abstain on that one.
You're gonna
too, Fatima.
abstain? Okay. All right. So for the 3 recommendations that went forward, with one abstention, can I make a recommendation to go forward with those that have been proposed?
Yes,
As
I'm in
proposed?
favor. Yes, I'm in
Rock
favor.
and roll.
Fatima.
Okay, with the rock and roll added to the official recommendation. Thank you.
Fatima, looks like there's a hand up.
Hi, yes. Hi, Javon. Would you have a question?
Yes, how you doing, Fatima?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. A couple of these
Great.
projects that you spoke about,
Yes.
I know that I didn't hear about them. And I guess I know they probably came up in front of the board, the different boards that Greater Mapping Hill Council have. But
They
besides
came
going
up
in front of,
in front of the board as well as the local neighborhood associations. Yes, they did.
In front of the large meeting like we have now?
They went in front twice. One has gone twice before a neighborhood association, the Edgewater Street Neighborhood Association. It's gone twice, as well as gone through, is working with the local businesses and church in the Edgewater Street area. The other one has just come before us, and we asked them to go back and to make some changes, as well as to get some written support letters and separate out. So we were not giving blanket approvals to anyone, if that's your question.
No, what I'm saying is that I thought for Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council,
Yes,
for you guys to approve them, they go through your board, and then they also come in front of the body, this body, the full body. And then based on what you hear from the body, you guys would, and based on what you heard from the body, from this meeting here, as well as what you heard from your board, and from what you hear from the civic associations and the abutters, you would make a decision. But I thought a big part of your decision would come from the folks who attend this meeting, because you have a lot of folks who attend your meetings only and don't attend the local civic association meetings.
right.
So those voices,
right.
those voices get heard through their comments at your meetings.
Right. They also had, my understanding, one of them already had a large community meeting that was put on by the city as well. And like I said, what we are voting on right now has to do with zoning. It does not have to do with anything else. And they went through that process. So that is what we are making recommendations today. You're more than welcome if there are other meetings that we would have. Like I said, again, there are provisos that we added in, and they will address those provisos. But that's strictly what this is about. But we can talk afterwards in the meeting, because we do have an agenda right now. And
Okay.
I'm more than open and ready to listen. Okay.
All right.
All
You
right.
always are. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
No problem. You're welcome.
Okay. Alrighty. Now that we have gotten that out of the way, I would like to begin and welcome the BPDA Plan Mattapan team. I believe we have 3. Is it 3 or 4 people here?
We've got quite a few of us on here
We
tonight.
have quite a few. I will.
I-
Oh, okay. I think there's even more.
I can run through all of us.
Yeah.
Okay,
we start
so
the
I'll
interpretation.
Okay, well, we'll start with Jared Staley from the,
Yes.
you're a senior planner, is that correct, Jared?
Planner 2. I'm the plan lead for Plan Mattapan.
Okay, plan lead for Plan Mattapan. That's a little bit of a mouthful, tongue twister.
I know.
You're going to begin to introduce everybody, including the interpreters that we have on for tonight for the presentation. We're fortunate that they're going to be done in both Haitian Creole as well as Spanish. And I will let you, Jared, begin. And just direct me when you want me to click on the interpretation button, please.
Yes, thank you. As I said, I'm going to run through just quick interpretation guidelines. I'll ask both of our interpreters to repeat that in their provided language on this channel, and then we'll open the interpretation channel. We do have interpretation in both Haitian Creole and in Spanish, as Fatima had said. If you need help finding that globe icon, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll have one of our teammates help you with that. Jardine, would you mind repeating that in Haitian Creole, please?
Nou gen interprétation nan Panyol avec Creole haïtien. Et nou gen 2 moun kap interprété pour nous. Et m'po aller parler de nou étiquette Zoom yo. Et puis après, quand nous fini, pour finir interpréter yo dans langage pa yo. Et puis m'a demandé pour yo mette langaj yo pou nou nan ekran. Si ou gen globe lan, nan ou moun kapab ede ou pou kapab choisi ki lang ke ou vle tande. Merci.
Thank you. And Sophia, if you could repeat that in Spanish, please.
Good evening, my name is Sofía and I'm the Spanish interpreter. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Sofía y soy la intérprete de español. Esta noche se proveerá interpretación en español y criollo haitiano. Va a aparecer un símbolo del globo que dice interpretación para que usted pueda accesar la interpretación tanto en español como en criollo haitiano. Si tiene dificultades para encontrar este botón, dejaremos un enlace en el chat para que usted pueda accesar a ayuda de parte de los miembros del equipo. Gracias.
Thank you. And Fatima, if you want to go ahead and open the interpretation channels.
It's been started.
Perfect. Thank you. Just real quick, as an overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Jemison to give some brief remarks, and then I'll get started with our presentation this evening. But we'll have a presentation and throughout we'll stop for Q&A. We will have someone who is taking live notes during that Q&A portion. I just ask that during the presentation, if we could mute our microphones, just to make sure that everybody can hear just as well as everyone else. There's no background noise, etc. But once the presentation is over or once we start the Q&A portion, I welcome you to come off of mute to ask your questions. You're also welcome to raise your hand and put questions in the chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking up during this meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over just real brief to Chief Jemison to provide some remarks.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm just here to kick us off for the discussion. I want to thank all the participants who've been joining these meetings over the past following months, or preceding month, I should say. Thank you for your citizens' voice as part of this discussion. I think I'm pleased with the work that's been put in by citizens and the planning team at BPDA and the vendor who's been working closely with us and you on these conclusions. I'm excited about a lot of them and really eager to hear the kind of feedback that you give us as part of this release of the draft plan. I also want to highlight, some of the most recent discussions I had with a few leaders in the community about in particular, Mattapan Square and commercial space, and eager to absorb the feedback you guys have, not only to what's here, but also things like the mayor's underlining of one of the elements here when she talked about the commercial acquisition program and the desire to work with local established legacy businesses. So at any rate, pleased with the conversation. I'm going to kick it off. I'll be joining other discussions over the rollout period of the draft plan, but I want to thank Jared in particular for leading tonight's meeting and pass it back to him. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Real quick, I'm just going to run through some other BPDA folks who are involved in this planning process. Kenya Beeman, who's our community engagement manager, has been a huge support. We have Kathleen Onifer on, who's assistant deputy director for downtown and neighborhood planning. Cyrus Maselli, who's our planning assistant, and will be taking live notes. We have Matthew Martin, one of our urban designers, Nick Schmidt, senior transportation planner. We have Sam Roy, who's also a senior transportation planner. I'm trying to see if we have anyone else from the Plan Mattapan team. We have quite a few others joining us from different city departments, including BTD and Public Works, as well as the Mayor's Office of Housing. So we're happy that they are on as well. I also see that we have Rep. Holmes and Rep. Fluker Oakley on the line, and a representative from Councilor Arroyo's office. If I missed any elected officials or the representatives, feel free to put that in the chat. And if I missed any press, feel free to put that in the chat. With that being said, I'm excited to just launch right into Plan Mattapan and all the details, or most of the details, that are in the plan. Tonight is really just an overview of the plan. There is quite a bit of information in this presentation. There's even more information in the written document that was released around 4 o'clock today. There will be some links in this presentation to help guide you to get to that to review. You're also welcome to ask me if you want a printed copy, and I can coordinate with Kenya to make sure that you get that. Real quick, I know we have quite a few people on the line and we haven't really talked about Plan Mattapan in quite some time. So I do want to reintroduce Plan Mattapan, including what is in the plan and what is not in the plan. And then we also want to set the stage for what feedback we're looking for and how best you can provide that. Then we'll jump into some plan content, and specifically around 3 geographies: the nodes, corridors, and residential fabric. And then we'll talk a little bit at the very end about what's next and what we have planned for the month of October. On the right here is a map of the 02126 boundary that we used to study Plan Mattapan. Through long conversations, we decided to use the existing zip code as our boundary. We are aware that the impacts of this planning initiative will be beyond this the zip code boundary. It was really just internally used to make sure that we were gathering the same data over time. So if the outline looks a little wonky, that is why. So why are we planning in the first place? Really, Plan Mattapan is aimed at setting the stage for the long-term equitable growth, investment, and sustainability of the neighborhood. And we can do that through 3 primary ways: streamlining our zoning code to be more accessible to the Mattapan community. This includes getting rid of what are called overlay districts and making that part of base code, and just making the zoning code easier to read to begin with. We also want to implement urban design recommendations along with new zoning to generate predictable and equitable growth. And I think the emphasis there is predictable and equitable. Another thing that we had noticed is that we really did not want to wait until the end of this planning process to really identify and implement some short-term strategies. Some of them you may have seen, such as the Public Art Initiative. We've had about 3 or 4 murals go up in Mattapan that the BPDA funded. And then myself and others on this call have been coordinating with DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, on the extension of the Neponset River Greenway through MAPC's Technical Assistance Program. We also really wanted to make sure that Plan Mattapan was confirming the priorities of past planning efforts in this area. As you'll see later on, there has been a number of plans that have either focused on Mattapan or have touched Mattapan, and we didn't want to reiterate those processes. We just wanted to confirm those priorities and think long-term about Mattapan. Some additional planning context, which I'm sure most of you are already aware of. The majority of these numbers come from the US Census data. 68% of Mattapan is Black and or African American. 34% of the neighborhood is foreign born or a non-US citizen, with primary point of origin being the Caribbean. And then 43% of homes in Mattapan are valued less than $400,000. And that's in comparison to 23% in Boston as a whole. 21% of renters are at an elevated risk of displacement in Mattapan, and that's compared to 25% of homeowners in Mattapan. The gap in median family income between Mattapan residents or Mattapan families and Boston families is about $17,700. So on average, roughly, the Mattapan family is making $17,700 less than the Boston family. And this number down in the lower right-hand corner came from our consultants. And this is the gap to develop a 2-bedroom unit at 70% area median income in Mattapan. What this really means is that in order to build a workforce unit or a moderately affordable unit, there would be a $250,000 gap, meaning a developer would need some support from city, state, or federal government in order to see that happen. Alternatively, we are seeing some development in Mattapan. I'm sure you're very much aware of that. We are seeing some long-term landowners be able to develop in Mattapan. But on a large scale, generally speaking, there would need to be some sort of subsidy to develop in Mattapan. Plan Mattapan is a values-driven planning initiative, and we really spent the first few months of our planning initiative working with a lot of you on this call and Mattapan residents across the neighborhood on really identifying where the goals and what is that vision for the future really. And we collaborated and we ended up with this statement, which has been a driving force for the rest of the planning initiative. So Plan Mattapan will strengthen the existing culture and stability of the community by supporting affordable housing, creating opportunities for businesses to thrive, and enhancing connections to improve the neighborhood's experience, accessing jobs and spaces where people gather. We're applying that vision into 3 distinct geographies within Mattapan. And those are the nodes, corridors, and residential fabric. So the nodes on this screen are the circle hatched areas, with Mattapan Square being the primary node. The corridors are these dark arrows. So Blue Hill Avenue, Cummins Highway, River Street, Morton Street. These are all the primary corridors in Mattapan. And then everything else is the residential fabric. Put another way, if you were to exit your home, look left, look right, and see the triple deckers or 2 families, that is what we mean by residential fabric. We can then break down that vision statement into 5 key goals and 5 topic areas of planning. And first, and really most important, is equity and environmental justice. Plan Mattapan aims to improve the quality of life, promote healthy environments, and prepare for climate change. In terms of housing, Plan Mattapan encourages affordable, stable, and diverse housing options in Mattapan to reduce displacement and maintain homeownership levels. In regards to mobility, Plan Mattapan aims to increase access to high-quality travel options so that people can safely and reliably connect to destinations within Mattapan, as well as with the rest of the city. In terms of jobs and businesses, Plan Mattapan really aims to drive inclusive economic growth through support for local economies and increase access to opportunities within and external to Mattapan. And then lastly, people and places. So we really want to guide new projects to contribute to strengthening the existing culture and celebrating Mattapan's identity. So as I said, there's been a lot of planning in recent years that has either focused on Mattapan or has touched upon Mattapan. This is just a brief look at what that is. And Plan Mattapan really aims to combine a lot of that information and push it forward. We started this planning process back in 2018, so we're almost at the 4-year mark. And as I said, we really started with the visioning and goals, and then we moved into recommendations development. And right now we are releasing the draft plan with the hopes of getting your feedback on that so that we can wrap that up and start on plan implementation, which would include interdepartmental coordination on certain programmatic elements, as well as moving forward with new zoning and design guidelines, which would have its own community process. Over the last almost 4 years, we have met over 100 times with the community. 13 of those have been public meetings, something similar to this, though hosted by the BPDA. And then 17, what we call Chat with the Planner, which are these small, more informal engagements where we're at the farmer's market or the public library, really just catching people as they're moving about their day to talk about Plan Mattapan or other planning issues in the neighborhood. And then Kenya has attended over 90 neighborhood association meetings, including GMNC, River Street Association, etc. And together we've attended around 26 informal engagement events. And these are events that are already hosted in the community: Mattapan Love, Mattapan Jazz Fest, National Night Out, etc., where people aren't really coming to talk about Plan Mattapan, but we were there to make sure that we were able to meet as many people as possible and let them know that this is happening. I do want to pause and provide a quick look ahead. So we released the plan today, and all throughout October, we are working with neighborhood associations to get on their agendas and make sure everyone can hear about Plan Mattapan at a high level. So everything in the light orange are these more neighborhood association meetings, except for the 20th, which will be the BPDA hosted meeting about Plan Mattapan and the draft plan. In green are these chat with the planners that I talked about a little bit earlier, where we're really just going to be out in the community for a couple hours, 2 to 4 hours, having hard copies of the plan available for folks to read, as well as comment cards, and really just making sure that we touch as many people as possible and letting them know that the draft of the plan is released and is ready for review and feedback. On November 6th, we will close the comment period on the draft plan. So I realize we released it at 4 o'clock today. I highly doubt all of you were able to read 70 pages worth of great content in those 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So we've made a 30-day comment period available to you. We really do want to see your feedback, and we hope you can provide that feedback throughout the month of October. At the end of that comment period, The Plan Mattapan team will be collecting that feedback and making adjustments to the plan as necessary. We will then send that plan off to translation again to make sure that everybody, no matter what your native tongue is, can read Plan Mattapan and understand it. And we intend to release the final draft on November 28th. We'll then have one more chat with the planner on December 1st, prior to going to the BPDA board to adopt the plan on December 15th. It's a lot of information. Another high level just kind of conversation I want to have before we get into the deep stuff is really these three key themes that are in the plan. One, these are things that we're really excited about. We're happy to be moving forward. One of them is we're providing new zoning at key nodes to create a 10-minute neighborhood. This is really aimed at promoting local businesses, as well as promoting all residents being able to access these businesses for essential goods and services within about 10 minutes of their home. And that's 10 minutes walking. So you should be able to walk out your door, go to a corner store, go to a cafe, a daycare, etc., all right within your neighborhood. We're also proposing to leverage the existing Green Links program to increase the Green Links network, creating better access to across the neighborhood, especially to open spaces. And this could look like new street trees, bioswales, but also more gray infrastructure like street crossings, curb cuts, and signage. We're also proposing some new zoning to allow for what is called ADU 3.0. And we'll get into that a little bit more later, but this is accessory dwelling unit, and this is the third version of it. This is really aimed as a tool to add more housing to the neighborhood, especially affordable housing, as well as supporting generational wealth. I do want to take a minute just to describe some of the things that are not in the plan. That way I'm making sure we're setting expectations and being very clear about that. There are some things that are just beyond the scope of Plan Mattapan. For instance, planning for public schools has never been a part of our planning initiative, neither has emergency services planning or planning for additional parks. Each of these different departments will have their own processes. Parks has already done a few processes around new parks. So we just want to make sure that they have their time to shine. Also, there are some concurrent processes that I know you're well aware of that are happening in the neighborhood. We do make mention of these in the planning initiative or the plan document itself, but we do not have details about those, as those are ongoing processes done by other departments, either at the city or at the state level. So we won't have details of the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action Plan or the Cummins Highway redesign, though we have had many conversations and continued conversations since the start of this planning initiative with both of those departments, ensuring that no matter the outcome from those processes, we are prepared for them from the plan perspective. We also don't have details of DCR's Neponset River Greenway extension along Edgewater. That's an ongoing public process, and we've been coordinating with them as well. Another thing that I want to touch on before I get into the details is really how do you provide feedback? And I think this is important just as I'm going through this, you can be thinking of what your feedback is and how it's best used by us. So we are looking for specific and detailed feedback on Plan Mattapan. What I mean by that is your feedback can be related to the numbers that are in the plan. Maybe you want to propose a different lot coverage percentage or a different FAR, floor area ratio number. Or you have some language adjustments that you want to see made. We're using community member, you would rather see us use resident. We want to be very specific about the feedback that we're providing. That way I can take it back and I can directly apply it to the plan where it is necessary. Your feedback should also be constructive. So we would rather see something like local convenience zoning should be designated at X and Y intersection, rather than just, I don't like this. It's equally helpful to us though, if you specify what you do like about Plan Mattapan. Plan Mattapan, as I said, is a 70-page document. If you write a feedback, comment letter, etc., that just says, I don't like this, I don't know what that means in relation to what in the plan. So as more specific you can be, and the more detailed you can be, the easier it is for us to make sure that whatever it is you're concerned about is being represented in the final plan. There are several ways to provide feedback. Tonight we'll be doing live note taking, as I said earlier, and you'll be able to see that on the screen. You can also submit feedback using the comment box on Plan Mattapan's webpage. And you can find that at bit.ly/plan Mattapan. That is case sensitive, so make sure you capitalize the appropriate letters. And then we'll have drafts of the plan at the library with comment cards and boxes where you can insert your comments. We'll also take that with us on the road for our Chat with the Planner events. So there are multiple ways that you can provide feedback, and we are really looking forward to hearing your feedback. I want to pause briefly there and just see if there are any logistics questions about how to provide feedback, where you can find the plan, etc.
I would just add, I've added several times the link to the Haitian Creole, Spanish, and English electronic version of the plan in the chat. I will continue to do so throughout this presentation. I've also let you guys know that if you scroll to the bottom of the Mattapan plan page, you'll see the comment form there to complete.
Sorry, I lost my mute button for a second. Thank you, Kenya. Are there any other comments? If not, we can jump right into the details of the plan. And thank you to Kenya, who's doing all the work in the chat for us tonight. So as I said earlier, we really broke down the vision of the plan and the goals of the plan into key geographies, what we're calling a neighborhood framework. So we have nodes, which are areas of heightened activity at key moments along major roads. These are highlighted in red here, and some of them are labeled. So we have Mattapan Square, which is the primary node in Mattapan. We have Blue Hill Avenue and the Fairmont line. We have Cummins Highway and Greenfield Road. We have a proposed future Fairmont station, which actually comes from an earlier plan, the Mattapan Economic Development Initiative, that we are continuing to uplift in this plan. Bog Hill Street and Almont Street, Blue Hill Avenue and Morton Street, the Morton Street Station, and then the River Street Shopping Center towards Lower Mills. So this is just an example of what those nodes are and where they're located. Some of these are existing nodes and others we're proposing through modest zoning changes to implement. And then the corridors are areas along major roads in Mattapan that can support businesses as well as larger scale development. And these include Blue Hill Avenue, Morton Street, River Street, and Cummins Highway. They're represented on this map by the arrows. Everything else is residential fabric, and that really refers to these areas in the neighborhood that are primarily, though not exclusively, used for housing, where you would typically see your triple deckers, your two families, or your single family homes. I think this is really important to understand because as we move through the presentation, I'll be talking about different aspects of the plan through the lens of nodes, corridors, and residential fabric. So what are some of our goals in the nodes? Again, nodes are areas of concentration and are ripe for mixed use development. So we have a lot of opportunities here. First and foremost, really mitigating environmental concerns like high temperatures and storm water flooding, as well as looking for improved health outcomes such as reduced heat, stroke, and asthma. In terms of housing, we really want to see additional affordability, accessibility, and other benefits that are necessary to achieve fair housing. Related to transportation or mobility, we're really focused on siting new nodes that would allow mixed use development within a 10-minute walking radius of residents' homes. And then in terms of jobs and businesses, really focusing on new commercial and mixed use zoning in the nodes that will expand where new businesses can be located. So that would be in some of these areas that are off of Blue Hill Avenue and not Mattapan Square. And then we also have a really great opportunity here to increase investment and care for public art, businesses, and gathering space in the neighborhood. We will make sure this you can all see this. There we go. So as I said, the primary node in Mattapan is Mattapan Square, as I'm sure you're aware. So Mattapan Square is the economic and social center of Mattapan, and Plan Mattapan really envisions Mattapan Square as an area where people can gather and build community in the heart of the neighborhood. as well as an area where local and small businesses can thrive and provide goods and services, as well as spaces for folks to gather, whether it's in a building, along the street, etc. However, and I want to be very clear here, due to market challenges, so that $250,000 gap that I mentioned earlier, zoning changes alone will not achieve this vision. We need our partners in other city departments and state departments to really help bolster this through programs to make sure that we're serving the people that we came here to serve. Part of that includes Chief Jemison actually coordinating with the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion on some possible strategies to really reinvigorate supports for local and small businesses in Mattapan Square. On the right here, you can see a view of Mattapan Square. This is taken at Blue Hill Avenue and Fairway, and what that could look like in the future. In the foreground here, you can see a small shop. It looks like it could be a cafe with some sidewalk seating, some large area for people to walk. We really want to make sure that we're making Mattapan Square and all of the neighborhood a walkable neighborhood, as we know that can contribute to healthier outcomes. In the background and kind of mid-ground, you can see outlined in yellow, a little bit higher density. And with that density, it supports these local and small businesses. We can also see improved affordability and accessibility to housing in Mattapan Square. Mattapan Square is located in what is known as a community commercial zoning subdistrict. That's a very technical, wonky term, but basically what we're saying here is that we want to see larger scale businesses in this area. That doesn't mean big box retail, it simply means serving a larger or a wider audience of people. The CC districts, or community commercial districts, are the most robust, allowing for transformative growth towards shared goals. As a part of Plan Mattapan, we are looking to increase the height in the CC2 subdistrict, which is Mattapan Square, to 70 feet and increase the floor area ratio to 4.5. Currently, the floor area ratio is 4. We'd also be requiring certain step backs at the upper stories to reduce the canyon effect. If you've ever walked in a really tight, narrow city with tall buildings, you're not getting a lot of light and air down into the street, and we want to avoid that by stepping buildings back at the upper stories. We'd also be increasing the required open space per unit. Currently, the CC districts do not require any sort of open space for residential units. We'd be adding that into the zoning and making sure that everybody has access to open space. We also want to make sure that those open spaces are high quality. They're not just balconies, they're not just privatized. Through some lot coverage requirements, we can bring additional light and air into adjacent structures, but also we are allowing developers to site buildings a little bit differently to provide opportunities such as those street cafes. What do I mean by lot coverage? So lot coverage goals work alongside other existing setback requirements. So if you're familiar with the existing zoning code, we require certain buildings to be set back from property lines in the front, side, and in the rear. Lot coverage works along with those to better transition from this higher density area in a node to lower density areas like the residential fabric. Specifically in the community commercial area, we're proposing that the minimum permeable surface should be 20%. So if you look at this graphic on the right, everything in this green hatch is what we would consider permeable. Permeable simply means that water can seep into the ground and it's not running off from the site. So we want to make sure that we're providing about 20% of the site to open space or this permeable space. We would continue to have the current applicable yard setbacks, so both rear, side, and front yard setbacks, as that's really making sure we're protecting the existing low density, so triple decker, 2-family structures in the neighborhood. What this also means, conversely, is that the maximum lot coverage of an ACC district would be 80%. So if you look at everything in this dark gray outlined by a black line, we are saying that that can only be 80% of the lot. That would include the building footprint as well as parking, surface parking lot. So if it does not allow water to seep in, it's considered part of the lot coverage. In this example, we're showing what the permeable surface would be about 25%, and the lot coverage here is about 75%. Though our minimum in terms of permeable surface is 20%, and our maximum towards the lot coverage is 80%. As you can tell, that all adds up to 100% of the lot. The only node is not Mattapan Square. There are multiple other nodes, and we're calling those nodes that are serving the residential fabric. So while Mattapan Square is the most prominent node, Play Mattapan proposes bringing essential goods and services closer to home. So in these areas right here, Cummins and Greenfield, for example, we'd be introducing what is known as local convenience zoning at these key intersections. What that would allow is for on the ground floor to bring things such as cafes, bodegas, maybe a daycare center, et cetera, to key intersections deeper into the residential fabric. We'd also be implementing lot coverage maximums while maintaining these setback requirements to make sure that we're protecting the existing homes that are there. The plan will also work with BTD to site Go Hubs at these same nodes. Go Hubs are really kind of multimodal nodes where you can access a bike, maybe a zip car, et cetera, to really help you get around the neighborhood and make your trip getting to and from other public transit a little easier. This is really aimed at trying to reduce the amount of private car usage within the residential fabric of Mattapan. We're not saying get rid of your cars. We know you're going to go to Brockton, et cetera, to do other visit family, travel, et cetera. But within Mattapan, we really want to limit private car usage and really focus on making and creating a realm where you can walk and bike to get to these places. So a little bit deeper or a closer look at where the local convenience zoning would be. So again, it's at these nodes where we start to identify a little bit more parcelization. We really want to foster mixed use activity. And what that means is having that bodega on the ground floor, but having a few stories of residential on top. We would set the allowable floor area ratio at about 1.75. So if you multiply the lot area times 1.75, that's the amount of usable square footage that a building could build. And we'd set the maximum building height at 55 feet. We'd also include usable open space requirements that would be about 75 square feet per unit. So if a building had 4 units, we'd be looking at about 300 square feet of open space on site. And like in our community commercial, we're introducing lot coverage requirements to bring light and air into these structures. Those numbers are a little bit different in the local convenience sub-district. So here we'd be looking at about 25% of the site needs to be permeable rather than 20. And the maximum lot coverage would be about 75%. And again, when I say permeable surface, it's everything in this green hatch here. So you can see that there's a little bit of a change from what the community commercial looked like. Lot coverage here is everything that is in dark gray with a black outline. So I want to pause there and take any questions. I'm going to switch over to our live note-taking document. And feel free to raise your hand, your virtual hand, and we can call on you to take questions. You can also put them in the chat and Kenny can make me aware of them as well.
There's one hand raised, Tamara Sobers.
Hi, thank you. Good night. I had a question on when you say mixed use development, what qualifies for mixed use development? Like, is the expectation that we should be able to walk out of a home and go grocery shopping or get basic essentials? Because I know you mentioned cafes and stuff. So is it like consistently across the board, everybody should be able to leave and within 10 minutes walking, be able to buy like a typical bag of groceries, or is it going to vary based on location? Thank you.
Yes. So to answer your first question, what is mixed use zoning? So mixed use really just means that there's more than one use in a property or that is allowed on the site. We in Boston have a zoning code that separates out uses. So residential would be one kind of subgroup of uses. So at any time that you have a building that is providing both housing for someone as well on the ground floor, there is a cafe, bodega, or a fitness center. That's a different use, so we call it mixed use. The goal and how we intend to write the local convenience zoning is to prioritize essential goods and services at these key nodes. So we can't guarantee that every site is going to have a convenience store and a daycare and a cafe, but we are encouraging that these sites have a mix of that. When we think about local convenience, we really are focusing on things that are convenient to you. You wouldn't necessarily be able to buy your full bag of groceries or what you typically would get at like a Shaw's or a Star Market. But say you need plantains or bananas, or you need something like a bag of sugar, you'd be able to go to this convenience store and grab that and walk home without having to hop in your car and go to a big box retailer for that. So really aiming at attempting to prioritize a mix of these different essential goods and services.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, we have a question from Miss Alana Feaster. Her question is, will you be planting additional trees and creating more green space within this plan?
So we would be prioritizing additional street trees. That's one major way that we can reduce the heat island effect. This is the effect where if we have a lot of paved surfaces, a neighborhood tends to be a lot hotter, and that causes a number of health issues as well as financial issues. Your homes have to run air conditioning more often, et cetera. So we do want to deploy more street trees throughout the neighborhood that is in the plan. Myself and my office do not handle that, so we are coordinating with the parks on that. In terms of creating more green space within the plan, we would be requiring private developers to provide green space on site. That's kind of where we started with this lot coverage idea, is making sure that we're preserving as much as possible of the existing green space within Mattapan that is on private land. Right now, Parks does not have a plan for increasing publicly owned open space within Mattapan. Our main priority here is making sure that you can safely get from your home to an open space near you by providing things like street trees, better crossings, et cetera.
Donald, you're next.
Okay, thank you, Kenya. Hey, Jared, how you doing?
I'm well, how are you?
Not too bad. Quick question. So, part of the plan, are you thinking about to do a feasibility study also to make sure that, it is something that's truly feasible, because to incorporate open space and street commercial, unless the city plan to use some of the other program like CPA or whatnot. So how will determine that's really feasible for a private developer, or unable developer to actually create that type of, mixed use?
So I would say absolutely do your feasibility study. You should see how that works for you and your business. I will say that in this planning process, we really prioritize the community benefits that come along with development. Through our conversations, especially around the nodes and corridors with residents, we heard it loud and clear that the majority of folks are open to additional height and density, as long as it comes along with these very key and necessary community benefits, such as additional affordable housing, green space, retail space, especially for a sit-down restaurant. And so we are really prioritizing that. I will also say that Plan Mattapan is really aimed at the long-term growth and sustainability of the neighborhood. We are aware that there is a gap to develop in Mattapan, but we want to prioritize the needs and the values that the community holds. So while this you may not see significant change tomorrow, next year, or even in 5 years, we really want to make sure that we have updated zoning that makes the development process predictable, both for the resident, the city, as well as you as a developer. So I think that's kind of where we are in this, but I highly encourage you to, do your own feasibility analysis and provide feedback on what you think is feasible versus isn't.
The next person, Jared, is Barry. Sorry if I butchered your name.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm just gonna say I'll take this one and one more, and then we need to move on to the next section, just so I can get through everything.
No problem. After him is Sheila, and then that'll be the last question before the next one.
Okay.
Hi, I just had a question about one of the nodes that was sort of west of Mattapan, like to the left.
Yep.
I was wondering like what I was wondering about the information about like that train station that's being proposed. Is there like more information on that? Is there like, and as far as that node goes, like where exactly is that node? Is that like where Price Right is? Or is that closer to towards Mattapan Station where, before it crosses that bridge across the train tracks? I was wondering.
Yes, so that is, so in the Mattapan Economic Development Initiative, or the MEDI, there was mention of a new MBTA station at River Street, where the Fairmount intersects it. So right near the Rite Aid area, right near that shopping center. We are continuing to push for that. We think it would bring a lot better connectivity for both Hyde Park and Mattapan residents. So it's really an MBTA decision, but we wanted to make sure that through this plan process, we did not lose sight of that as a goal. We really are focused on making sure that folks can connect both downtown and out of downtown to Mattapan efficiently. So it's really at that intersection of kind of the bridge right before getting to Rite Aid.
Okay, that's helpful. So it's like closer to Mattapan than when I was thinking. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question will be the last question for this section. I just want to remind everyone, you will have time to provide feedback, and we are requesting written feedback, so you can email me or through the comment box on Plan Mattapan's website, provide more information.
Hi, thank you. My question is, what is the percent of home ownership currently in Mattapan?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So roughly it's about 60%, and we hope to maintain that as a level throughout the neighborhood.
All right, and so then you're looking then to have 40% rental?
Yeah, so we would want to maintain where we are currently. So roughly 60% of the neighborhood is home ownership, 40% is rental. As new development comes online, we want to stay within that range.
Okay, and then my second question is, what's the age demographics presently in Mattapan in terms of, age? What is the age of the people living in Mattapan right now?
I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head, but I will say that Mattapan is kind of at the ends of the spectrum. So we have a large population that is senior, but we also have a large population that is young children. So we are aware, and we want to make sure that as we are looking at new housing development in Mattapan, as new developers come online, et cetera, that we are being mindful of that, and that we're making sure that new residential units are accessible to everybody.
Because I'm wondering what the plan is for seniors who have mobility issues walking to these different locations that you're referring to. That's sort of a concern that I have, the walking and the bicycles. Seniors aren't on bicycles. But I'm just wondering what the plan is for seniors.
Well, I think one thing I'll say is that our main goal here with providing space for people to gather and including, wider sidewalks or et cetera, is that it is easier for folks who have mobility issues, whether they're senior or not, to get around. But we also recognize that not everybody is going to bike, not everybody's going to rollerblade, not everybody's going to walk. So we are being mindful of that, but we do want to make sure that Mattapan is accessible to everyone, which would include creating better crossings as well as curb cuts for those crossings. And that's really just the ramp down to get to a crossing. I'm happy to follow up if you have more questions about that via email or set up another time to talk, but I do need to move on to the next section just so we can get through everything tonight.
Hey, Jared, I had a quick comment on one of the questions.
Go ahead.
It's back to the Medi. Obviously, we did that 10 years ago, and it's about that train station. We didn't want to lose the thought that at the time there was a question about what we do at the station in Mattapan, where we did it at Cody Ford, or would it happen down in Hyde Park? And so when we were writing that, the thought was we thought it was a good idea to do both stations. And so no, it wasn't to replace the high-speed line, which is the question. But your point was it was there, still is a good idea if we got another station. Is the point you were just trying to make.
That's correct. Thank you, Representative. So moving on, again, I know there are a lot of questions. There will be throughout October. Feel free to email Kenya and myself or put a comment in the comment box. See us at the farmer's market or the library. But we're now going to turn to corridors. So these corridors, again, Blue Hill Avenue, Cummins Highway, River Street, and Morton Street are excellent locations to create additional public realm. So sidewalk cafes, wider sidewalks, etc. Reduce heat island effect and promote local jobs and businesses. And you can see that through some of our goals and those topic areas there. In these corridors, Mattapan's corridors really afford us the opportunity to increase height and density in exchange for increased community benefit. And I really want to emphasize in exchange for increased community benefit. I think that gets back to an earlier question where we are not interested in just developing bigger just for the sake of bigger. We want to make sure that as new development comes online, we are securing community benefits such as increased affordable housing options, improved pedestrian and bicycle experiences through streetscape and green space design, as well as maintaining and providing active ground floor uses to encourage that walkability and gathering. And what we mean by active ground floor use is something that is on the ground floor at street level, and you see people going in and out every day. So it may not be an office space. It would be more of a clothing retailer. It could be a beauty shop. It could be a convenience store, etc. Something where people are actively going in and out and there is kind of this buzz. However, I do want to emphasize that these zoning changes along Blue Hill Avenue as well as Cummins Highway will be coordinated with ongoing corridor improvements by the respective city departments. I also want to highlight a case study where we've been able to use the ongoing process of Plan Mattapan to really influence development that is happening today. And that would be 1525 Blue Hill Avenue. I'm sure some of you are aware of this project. Myself and others on the BPDA planning staff were really able to leverage this ongoing process to preserve the existing mature tree on site, as well as to increase that permeable surface and maintain an active ground floor use. So as you can see in the green here on the site, how much green space or open space, that permeable surface that we're preserving. We also added a couple street trees and we preserved that existing tree. Our older trees are the best at sequestering carbon, so reducing some of the climate change impacts. And then maintaining that ground floor use was incredibly important as well. I also want to recognize that we worked significantly with the project proponent to ensure that there was minimal impact on the neighboring two family, or at least minimizing that. So like in the CC and then the LC or the local convenience zoning subdistricts, along Blue Hill Avenue and a portion over here towards Lower Mills is where the neighborhood shopping zoning subdistricts are. We really, again, want to foster that mixed use activity. So along some of these corridors, you might notice that the buildings are only 1 or 2 stories, and they're only commercial space. We see that as an opportunity to build on top to provide additional housing. And we really want to drive as much of this transformative growth to the nodes and corridors to really preserve the existing character of the residential fabric. We'd be increasing the floor area ratio in neighborhood shopping subdistricts from about 0.9 to 1.75. And the building height from about 35 feet to 55 feet, or 3 stories to about 5 stories. We'd also be increasing the usable open space from 50 to 75 square feet. And again, we'd be having the introduction of lot coverage requirements, which are new both to Mattapan, but in Boston as well. I do want to point out the neighborhood shopping and local convenience sub-districts are dimensionally the same. So if you were to look at a dimensional table of how high could I build, what is the maximum FAR, et cetera, all of that's going to be very similar / the same. Where they differ is in their allowed uses. So in neighborhood shopping, we're going to see a wider array of businesses because these are located on a major corridor, they're more central to the entire neighborhood. Whereas in the local convenience, we're really focused in on those essential goods and services. Again, since they're dimensionally the same, they look very similar in terms of their lot coverage requirements, where we're seeing in this green, we really want that to be 25% of the site. In this example, it looks like 34. And the maximum lot coverage, or everything that's in this gray and black, should be 75%. In this example, at a maximum 75%. And in this example, it's 66%. We'd also be looking to increase the amount of multifamily residential zoning that is in Mattapan along the corridors. So we really want to make sure that we're matching the scale of recent successful multifamily developments in the area. And that would mean increasing building height from about 35 feet to 45 feet, roughly from 3 stories to 4 stories. We also, again, a major theme of this plan is making sure that we're providing excellent open space for residents to provide stormwater control, as well as just beautifying the neighborhood. And again, we'd have introduction of lot coverage requirements here. And in this example, this would be really on a 50-50 split. So half of the site really should be available for groundwater retention or that permeable surface. And the other 50% can be dedicated to your parking and development of the building. Everything else about the zoning subdistrict, so the current yard setbacks, et cetera, would remain in place. So I'm going to pause there again if there are any questions about the corridors.
I have one question that you brought up about the stormwater drainage. On my street, I live right off of the off of Edgewater Drive, where the Mattapan River is, and with the recent heavy rains that we had some people who actually had raw sewage back up into their basements. And so, and they had to work with last week with Boston Water and Sewer. So with the climate change and things, when they're looking at development, I do stress that there be close working with ensuring that, you know, the infrastructure in this area has not been addressed for many decades. And our homes are overall a lot older and significantly older in some areas. But because we live in a very sensitive area, we have, you know, the river, you have some are low-lying areas than others, but it is a significant cost for repair when these kind of things happen. The second thing had to do directly along the corridors, dealing with the transit demand management strategies. I didn't know if you could speak a little to how that is shown to be integrated into the plan Mattapan.
I'll start, but I would love if either Nick or Sam wanted to jump in on this. So TDM, or transit demand management strategies, are part of our Article 80 review process. And those are triggered anytime an Article 80 process comes in. And from my understanding, those are actually set by BPDA. So yes, it's still applicable. We don't have specific mention in this plan about how those apply. Though, you know, this is a draft plan, we can accept comment on that and kind of think about how we enter into that or make mention of it in the plan. But if Sam or Nick want to pipe in, just kind of with their perspective as transportation planners.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for handing it to me, Jared. So yeah, the TDM measures have just been kind of rebooted within the past year or so with BTD with respect to large Article 80 projects. So that's any project over 50,000 square feet would be Mattapan would be required to enter into a transportation demand management plan. All the strategies are very clearly laid out in a menu, and there's a point system now where a development will have to meet a certain number of points, and even each strategy is worth a different amount of points depending on how impactful it's known to be to encourage folks to use alternative modes of transportation. So while Jared mentions, we don't specifically, have those options, kind of actually listed in the plan document, it's something that we use along with our colleagues at BTD to help review developments. The whole idea being that there are opportunities to encourage how to take other modes, walking, biking, taking the bus, taking transit, things like subsidized passes for transit, and all sorts of other measures like that, even down to things like informational screens inside building lobbies that kind of tell you as you're entering or leaving, what are the services nearby and when the next bus is coming, or where the blue bike station is, if it has any bikes in it. So it's a pretty wide, and it's a wide variety of strategies, but they're all very complementary to the types of strategies that we're recommending within the plan in terms of public investment. But that's largely more of a the kind of the private side to encourage use of the sort of public side investment of things. It's very complementary.
Will there be more of a push to bring it down to the general Article 80 process, considering how there's such a huge push on what doing on Blue Hill Avenue, and considering regardless if it's 50,000 square feet or not, because we have some projects that are 100 square feet short of 50,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So it's significant when they don't have it.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Not everything is as large as a quote unquote large project, right? So we do incorporate a lot of the same principles into our review of smaller projects that we get to review at the BPDA. And a lot of those do make it into, as part of the review of projects. And I think that when we were just looking at earlier, the 1471 Blue Hill Avenue is a great example of that. So, sometimes depending on how the review goes and what the project it is, how large it is, what its uses are, we are able to integrate some of those strategies directly into the review of that and kind of codify that within the kind of the board memos and the cooperation agreements that kind of conclude the BPDA process. So they're not sort of like legally required to because of the project size, but we do still do our best to encourage all the same types of strategies.
With the proposed project size, so just called. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So just keeping an eye on time. This is not to stifle anybody's questions or comments related to the plan. Again, I encourage you to read the entire plan posted on our website and provide feedback through the appropriate channels. And we'll have more opportunity as we visit all the neighborhood associations this month. But I am going to move on to our residential fabric recommendations, because I think a lot of you will be interested in this. And then we can have comments at the end, and then I'll just bring up the calendar one more time to see exactly what we're doing for the rest of the month. So in the residential fabric, again, this is everything except for the nodes and the corridors that we already talked about. This is really just the low rise, triple deckers, et cetera, in Mattapan. So in terms of equity and environmental justice, we want to make sure that we're supporting all who wish to remain in their homes and in the neighborhood to do so. We want to support existing residents and increase the housing supply, including intergenerational housing. We also want to reduce cut-through traffic and encourage residents to connect with the neighborhood in other ways, as well as reducing commute times and making the trip to and from public transit as enjoyable and smooth as possible. And focus really in on the arts community in Mattapan and developing culture and maintaining the culture that exists in Mattapan, or cultures rather. Allowing artists live, work, housing through zoning to support local artists to continue to be anchored in the neighborhood. there's a couple different things and themes within the residential fabric that the plan proposes. We haven't really talked about the Green Links Network, but that's a main theme of the residential fabric. It happens on the streets and it leads to different corridors, but really it's going to have a residential fabric impact in that you'll be able to access open space and other community assets easier, safer, etc. And so the Green Links program is actually an existing program at the ETD. Mattapan or Plan Mattapan is proposing to leverage that to include other things and really make sure that it's safe as possible for you to access these areas. Some interventions include additional street trees to have a little bit better shade and cooling, bioswales to retain water, as well as bike lanes, but also focusing a lot on the pedestrian aspect of it as well, which would include additional signage, better markings at crosswalks, curb ramps at crosswalks that are accessible, as well as slowing traffic through a number of different avenues, including speed humps on some of the side streets. We'd also be proposing some modest changes to support residential infill development. So there's a lot between your house and your neighbor's house that is vacant. That is really what we mean by infill. The aim here is really to make sure that the overall height of the project and the lot coverage is similar to neighboring projects. And then we'd be introducing some zoning changes that would support ADU or accessory dwelling unit 3.0, which really has the potential to provide 2,400 new homes in the neighborhood without having a massive impact on the existing fabric. And by that, we mean accessory dwelling units are really intended to be in rear yards, so they're not as noticeable. They're much, much smaller than a primary structure. So they won't have as much of an impact, but they can increase opportunities for affordable housing as well as generational wealth building. I'm going to talk briefly about ADU, the ADU program as it exists, what's being piloted, and then you get to see a little bit of the future, and then we'll move into some questions. So really in accordance with the mayor's 2030 housing plan, additional dwelling units address the following issues as discussed with community members across Boston. Really increasing affordable housing options, supporting multi-generational family arrangements. This is a key theme for Mattapan that we've heard, as well as supporting homeowners to remain in their homes by generating a steady rental income. I will note that there are some barriers to participation in the ADU program. For one, there can be a lack of knowledge of the ADU program and how it applies to your house. There's also some limited resources in terms of design and engineering services to construct an ADU. And then Boston's permitting process can be confusing and lengthy. So not everybody can take advantage of that. We want to make sure that we're addressing those barriers through ADU 3.0 as well. The current ADU program is in zoning. It's across the city of Boston. Right now, we're seeing about 89 accessory dwelling units are in construction or complete across the city. And I think that number is roughly 15 in Mattapan. And there are about 62 in the pipeline for permits across the city to be constructed. The mayor's office is piloting what is known as ADU 2.0. This is really an expansion of the ADU 1.0, where any existing garage, carriage house, or even a pigeon coop could be converted into a residential home. In Mattapan specifically, there are 1,548 existing accessory structures. So there are 1,548 of either garages, carriage houses, pigeon coops, etc., on lots in Mattapan, and that makes up about 35% of the total building stock. Through ADU 2.0, we're also really aimed at making sure that we can expand the existing load program. We would need to have some zoning amendments to implement it, as well as we want to simplify the permitting process, and we would need to address some fire access requirements that other cities have been able to do. This is not by any means saying that we're going to make it less safe to be in an accessory dwelling unit. It's just identifying alternatives to a 20-foot drive access that can make sure that the unit is safe, such as using sprinklers. ADU 3.0 is an extension, is really what you would think of in terms of additional dwelling unit. When I talk to colleagues or people in other cities, this is really what they think of when we say ADU. And this is the new construction of an accessory dwelling in the rear yard. So rather than just having an existing garage or pigeon coop, you could build something to house another family or a couple. ADU 3.0 would also include changes to the existing primary structures envelope. So if you think about your main structure right now, maybe you live on a triple decker, it would be possible to add dormers to provide an additional unit, or you can make changes on the exterior to add a basement unit if you're not within the floodplain, etc. So it's really expanding the opportunities to provide new housing and create this intergenerational housing arrangements, as well as generational wealth building. In Mattapan, there would be a potential for 2,400 new units or new homes for people just through ADU. And this is a low impact way that we can really make sure that we're providing some additional affordable housing and accessible housing. That is if we don't require the 20-foot drive access, which most people in Boston do not have, for a fire truck to access that unit. If the drive access is required, that number drops dramatically to 750. So again, we are not asking or seeking that to make these spaces any less safe. We're really just thinking of alternatives to having drive access that other cities, both close to home, such as Cambridge and Somerville, as well as across the country, have been able to do. Plan Mattapan will continue working with the Mayor's Office of Housing on the ADU pilots that are already underway, as well as exploring ADU 3.0, including any additional supports that are needed in order to make that happen. ADU 3.0 will be on a slightly different timeline in terms of zoning, just because there's a lot more work that needs to be done in terms of how big can these accessory units be. So what does that footprint look like? How far from the side lot line do they need to be? How tall can it be, etc. There's a lot more work that we can do, but we really are setting the stage in Plan Mattapan to allow this to happen. So with that, I want to stop there. I will take the last minutes that we have remaining to talk about anything that's in the plan, especially the residential fabric. And I'll leave this just for a quick second to have a look at. We will post this presentation online. Again, throughout the entire month of October, we'll be out in the community talking about Plan Mattapan. So if I don't answer your question tonight, does not mean I'm ignoring you, just we didn't have time tonight. I'm happy to make time throughout the rest of October. So are there any questions on this?
Mr. Lopes had a question. He hasn't asked any question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Lopes, David Lopes, you had a question? Or did you want me to add? He had a question. He wanted to know, will there be street improvements on the corridor to calm the traffic and improve safety and walkability on the side streets? Because many of the side streets are very narrow. Better sidewalks, signage, street slowing measures, and crosswalks.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the question correctly. So the question is, will there also be improvements on the major corridors, or is it, will
the corridors and the aerial streets on the side, because oftentimes they're much, much narrower, and then people think they can, go on the side streets to avoid whatever they perceive.
Yeah, I'm on now, Fatima.
Okay.
Just to clarify that. I mean, we're already getting severe cut-throughs, people trying to avoid traffic on Blue Hill Avenue. So if we're talking about this plan and how it affects the residential neighborhoods, then to me, it would seem that we need to include street calming methods on the side streets, especially at intersections where there's 2 or 3 streets that come together, whether it's stop signs or whether it's a small rotary or turn or a roundabout. I've seen it done on Southern Avenue in Dorchester that works very well. Also, the correct signage and the correct and improving the sidewalks. If we want to make it walkable, for instance, we have Wellington Hill pathways that for God, I don't know, 40 years, nothing has ever been done on it. And these pathways were made so that you could walk from, let's say, all the way from Walk Hill Street up to the top of Wellington Hill, and then back down again on the other side to Westmoreland Street without having to go all the way around the hill. Will you consider including the improvements on some of the stuff that's already there, like the Wellington Hill footpaths in this plan?
Yes, so I think there's a lot in there, but really the aim is to reduce cut-through traffic, one, and make it safer to walk in Mattapan. So I think that answers a lot of the question there. That includes crossings, both at intersections, neighborhood side streets, etc. We really want to focus in on the pedestrian experience. In the plan, under the green link section, there's actually a map of where we intend to see green links and what that kind of looks like. For instance, we've heard that it's really difficult to cross Blue Hill Avenue and get from one side of Mattapan to the other via walking. And so part of that in the green links is making sure that it can happen. And so yes, green links does involve crossing these major corridors and making it safer to do so.
But the other part of that in connecting is, for instance, where they did the new development at Olmsted Green, all that thing, and you try to cross Harvard Street at I think it's Deering Road, and no one ever considered putting a traffic light there, you know. And how do you do all that development and not have the conscience to say, oh, you know what, we're going to need to put a traffic light here, or we should have done a traffic study to see how many people are going to now be crossing the street. So what's connecting here? Are you connecting with the developers and making them aware that they need to be part of improving the street process while development is going on? I noticed there was two of them, you know, on this meeting, which I find interesting.
Yes, so we have been, as I said, been using this plan to really hone in on the values and the vision for Plan Mattapan and work with developers on that. Without speaking directly to an existing or an ongoing project that's under review, I will say that the plan does look at certain intersections, including along Harvard, on making those safer. So that is something we're very much aware of. It wasn't in this presentation, but it is in the plan. And we are working with developers to make sure that the community benefits and really the vision that we've heard from everyone over the last 4 years is being implemented today. So if we want to have a conversation about that particular development, I'm happy to do so at another time. But I will say the plan itself does address a lot of your concerns. I think I can do one more question, and then out of respect for everyone's time and Fatima for graciously allowing us to use GMNC's meeting. Go ahead.
Jared, I think that even though it is now 8 o'clock, because this is a special presentation and we have waited so long to see you guys together again, as they say, we'd appreciate it if you would be able to go as long as you can, reasonably can. And those who do have to leave, we understand. But I wouldn't want to miss an opportunity for people to ask questions, especially since we have so many of you here.
And if I could just jump in here really quickly, because I can stay to 8:30. I can't stay beyond that. However, we have a lot of questions that I've gotten out of the chat. And so Fatima, what do you recommend that we just go? Because I've made note of those questions. But I also see there are a few hands up as well.
Why not take just a few hands? And but you've taken note of the questions. If you can have a place on the BPDA map, on the BPDA site that we can link to where you answer the questions, and then maybe we can post them also. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we can do that.
Because you're taking note of these now.
Yeah.
And I imagine you would like to post them publicly, and we'll link to those public posts. Is that something that makes sense?
We can
add it to
absolutely do
chat,
that.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
maybe,
And that way you're capturing live what was asked. And, you know, it's a permanent record. Is that okay?
I don't mind that idea. I think what makes me a little nervous is that everybody doesn't go to the Mattapan website. And so in addition to
No, I
that,
mean
I
in
would love to
both,
send
in
you the
both.
responses. Yeah, so that way.
Oh, yeah.
you
No,
may be
no,
able- okay.
your questions and your answers. And that way we just keep it. We won't take it away. We just want to make sure that everybody
Yeah.
sees it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy to do
If
that.
that
I'm
makes
also happy
sense.
to stay on until 8:30. I can't speak for the rest of my team. So Cyrus, I know you're taking notes. If you can't stay, just let me know and I can take over writing. But I'm
Whichever
happy to
works
stay
for
until
everybody.
8:30.
Whichever works for everybody. I just didn't want anybody, this is such an important
Yeah.
topic and you've waited so long. I didn't want anybody to miss the chance.
I appreciate that. And like I said, happy to stay until 8:30 tonight. And then all throughout October, we'll be out talking about Plan Mattapan. So
Okay.
Can we
Take it
put
away,
the,
folks.
can we put the engagement calendar on there so people can just pay attention to that? Because I want folks to really see the color code on the bottom. We'll be doing civic tours, civic group, neighborhood association tours throughout the month. We'll also be doing, we'll be at the library for chat with the planner this Thursday. We're also going to be at the Mattapan Farmers Market several weekends of the month. So I just want to let folks know that if you can't get your question answered here, there's several places. Either we'll, as we've already noted, we'll get it to you. But you're also gonna go to the website and put your comment or question there, or meet us at one of these engagement spaces and come and have a chat with us. So.
Great.
So you want to go to, I think the next person is Jovan, and then after Jovan is Louis Gant.
Please,
Thank you,
I do
Candy.
want to only ask everyone if they be very succinct with your questions. That way we can have more people address.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, so what I wanted to ask is, if you can just elaborate a little bit more about this T-stop you want to create. I think based on what you said, it was going to be somewhere around, what's the stop over there? I texted, I
So
forgot.
the T-stop would be, so the T-stop really comes from the Mattapan Economic Development Initiative. So a previous plan that focused on Mattapan Square. And it really, the MEDI identified it at River Street and the Fairmount line. So it would be one stop after the Blue Hill Avenue Cummins Highway stop. And that's really where it'd be looking at located. The plan does not have details on exactly what that would look like. There would be a whole nother process if the MBTA were to move forward with siting a new station there, which we encourage them to do. There would be a station area plan related to that. What Plan Mattapan does is reinforce that idea from the MEDI. And that was one key thing that we really wanted to focus on. There's been a lot of planning in Mattapan in recent years, over the last decade, et cetera. And we didn't want the great ideas from previous plans to go unnoticed. So we wanted to reiterate them in this plan.
If I could just add to that, the last time we checked with MBTA, they do not have anything in the master plan for that project as of recently. So I just want to put that out there. They're not like digging ground tomorrow to put that stop there, that station there.
Okay, because you know what, the objections that came about just for the Blue Hill, the community rail stop, but I know this is, we'll talk about this in much more detail with that community, that direct community there. Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Can
Thank
I
you, Javon.
jump in again?
Yes, Red Holmes.
So Javon, that is the same conversation. As one of the chairs of MEDI, that's what I was trying to just remind. At that time, 2006, 2007, whenever it was, the discussion was, should we take the station that was planned for Cody Ford and put that, because there was such resistance at Cody Ford, should we put that station where it was really desired, down over by River Street, by the river walk? And so that's why that was still in MEDI, because of the fact that it was a major desire and push to put it there. As you know, we still cited it at the Cody Ford site. They're just simply saying, that location still is void of a good transportation option. And it would have been on the commuter rail. So the question was, should we also put a stop near there? That's all that is. They're just bringing back that conversation that the community was asking for, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago.
Thank you, Rep.
Next is Louis Gant.
It's Louise.
Louise, I'm sorry, ma'am.
That's all right. That's all right. So my question is around the ADU. Having, I mean, this is the first time really hearing about the concept of the ADU, and I'm thinking if a property owner has a building, a structure that they want to expand and create housing out of, what do the neighbors have? Can the neighbors actually have any input into that? I mean, can the property owner just build whatever the zoning says it's all right?
Yes. So I mean, I foresee there being problems there. Yeah, I'm going to answer part of it with using ADU 1.0, which is existing in our zoning code today. And then the other part I'll reference is the ADU 3.0 that the plan is proposing. So your question about whether or not a homeowner could, or a property owner could build an ADU without going to the neighbors. And the answer for ADU 1.0 currently, yes. If they are meeting the requirements, and this goes for really any new development, new, deck, addition, anything on a home in Mattapan, if it complies with the zoning code, that means it meets all of the criteria and requirements in the zoning code, it is what is considered as of right. And that means there is no community process related to it. I will say the caveat to that is, in order to change zoning, we have to have a community process for the new zoning amendments. So that's where ADU 3.0 comes in. ADU 3.0, as I said, would require a longer zoning community process, because we still have a lot of details that we haven't worked out, such as how big can this new thing be. Where you come in is really helping us through that zoning process and community conversation about what is too big, what is too small, etc. So really, we're working together to set the standards that somebody else could use. In the event that ADU 3.0, or when ADU 3.0 does become zoning in Mattapan, as long as a property owner abides by everything in the zoning code, it does not need to have a community process.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you.
And last is Ms. Sheila.
Hi, yes, thank you. My question is, why was Mattapan selected for this plan? In other words, what about Mattapan was attractive that made this plan become a target of, as opposed to another neighborhood, say like West Roxbury?
Yes, so this plan initiative was actually started at the direction of Mayor Walsh back in 2018. So it was ultimately the mayor's decision to launch this planning initiative. I can't speak for Mayor Walsh and his team on what they decided. What I can say as a planner, and why we are planning in Mattapan, is that if you remember some of the numbers at the very beginning, Plan Mattapan actually has some of the highest, or fortunately has the most lower value land in Mattapan, which makes it ripe for development. So when we have low land values, new development could come in and compete against existing residents for that land. As a planner, I want to make sure that we're getting ahead of new development and setting the rules and regulations along with you for what new development looks like. So we do have ongoing planning processes across the city and other neighborhoods, et cetera. And in some of those neighborhoods, they were prompted by aggressive new development or just generally a greater magnitude of development in that neighborhood. The benefit that we have in Mattapan is while there is new development coming to Mattapan, we're still at the early stages where we can set the rules and the standards together to really just dictate what new development looks like in your community. So 20, 30 years from now, we have a set vision on what that was supposed to look like. What we're proposing in Plan Mattapan is not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take time. And if we can set the rules today together, it makes it much easier both for you, because you know exactly what it's supposed to look like, and for me as a planner working with developers, I can say, we had these community conversations over 4 years. You need to follow the plan. And we've been able to do that currently. So as a planner, I think this is the best time we can be doing planning in Mattapan. Like I said, we did more than just zoning. We are working with our sister agencies and offices, such as BPDA and Public Works, Mayor's Office of Housing, on providing some of these programmatic supports as well.
I see. So am I to understand that a neighborhood such as, let's say, a West Roxbury, because that neighborhood does not have the same level of lower income, lower economic status, that basically it's better to target those neighborhoods where there is more poverty?
Can I answer some of this?
Go ahead, Rep. Holmes.
Madam, this was not a desire to target Mattapan. That's a word, interesting, I heard you twice, as though this was a negative thing. I can tell you we have advocated strongly, at least I have advocated strongly, that because of the development, so often I was hearing things are happening to Mattapan and we haven't discussed it. And so a plan about what we do over the future of Mattapan that we as a community have voiced and have input to is what the other neighborhoods are begging for. Hyde Park and West Roxbury and those other neighborhoods are actually begging to have something like this happen, that the community is involved in what their neighborhood looks like over the next 20 or 30 years. So I'm sorry it feels like it's being targeted, but we know that there's gonna be a lot of development around this city. And I know it feels like an awful lot, and I said this to Jared, even in our prep meeting, folks feel like we've done an awful lot of development in Mattapan, but as I sit here across the street, there's a $3 or $40 million building being built across the street. Can you imagine if you just built that along Blue Avenue? So as we're preparing for what Mattapan looks like, the whole point of all of this is to get everyone's input so that we're not targeted, that we are having some guidelines that developers come in, and we've all as a community had a conversation about what our neighborhood is going to look like in the future. So this is not about targeting Mattapan. It's about actually making sure we're not targeted and making sure our voice is heard before larger developments come in. I apologize, or it's unfortunate. So all of us who were in office at that time were advocating, let's plan Mattapan. Let's make sure we just don't have overdevelopment. So West Roxbury would like this, what we're doing, not the opposite way.
Thank you, Rep. Holmes.
Fatima and Jared, because I want to make sure that we at least get to some of the questions that folks have asked a while ago. I know we have Dana that has raised his hand just recently, and then I don't know if Javon is from his last question. But I want to just ask a few of the questions from the chat, if that's okay.
If you would ask the questions from the chat first, that would be most appreciated.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
Kathy Glenn sent the question. Her question is this: can you please provide more detail on how BPDA calculated the money subsidy gap that you presented? For example, does it assume certain types of mixed use profile in development?
Yes, I think it's a simple answer. It does. So I will say the BPDA itself did not run those numbers. Throughout the planning process, we worked with a consultant who had sub-consultants. One of those sub-consultants is RKG, who is they work in real estate financing, and they helped us identify what that gap is. So yes, there were a series of different numbers and calculations that were involved. We also looked at recent developments in Mattapan and wanted to better understand how they were able to come to be, knowing that RKG, the subconsultant for real estate and the real estate market, had told us that there was such a disparity between what could be built versus what needed subsidy. So there was a lot of conversation about that. We did a lot of analysis. I don't have all of those numbers in front of me right now. And honestly, I think it would be difficult to remember if I did have them in front of me, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you on how we, what the calculations actually look like and how we arrived at that number, or the consultant did.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
The next question is from Dane Fletcher. And his question is, where is Mattapan at in terms of affordable housing? Is there a percentage threshold that needs to be reached that is driving more development?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head on the amount of new affordable units that have been constructed in Mattapan. We do have some of that information online. I'm happy to share what we call the data packet that included existing affordable units as well as new ones that were coming online. And so that would give you a pretty good idea. I will say that we do not have a target number, or at least I have not been given a target number of the amount of affordable housing that needs to be built in Mattapan. In addition to that, I would say any new development that is 10 units or more requires 13% of those units to be affordable out of 70% AMI. So that's the inclusionary development policy, and that applies not only to Mattapan, but to Boston as a whole. In terms of updating that number, that is a process that will be led by the Mayor's Office of Housing at some point in the future. But right now, we are focused on maintaining the IDP number. And in new development through this plan that comes, making sure that affordable housing is a requirement as a community benefit in exchange for some of this additional height and density.
Great.
I'm hoping I answered that question thoroughly.
Next question is from, Zanita Armstrong. Could you say something about additional parking in the plan?
So we have not addressed additional parking in the plan itself. That's something that would come out through our zoning process. So this is a great time to talk about a little bit about the timeline. The plan itself is a framework for identifying the new zoning and urban design regulations that would come out of this. So it is really a guideline for us moving forward. Once the plan is adopted, we would then move into a community process around zoning. And included in that would be a conversation about parking. The plan itself does not identify additional parking in the instance of like parking garages or parking lots. That is not something that is identified in this plan. But in terms of new development and what the parking ratios would be, that is something that would come up through our zoning process once the plan has been adopted.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Tiffany Vassell. Who determined that Mattapan should be 40% rental? Why are we not creating homes and encouraging home ownership?
So no one determined that number. The 40% comes from our data analysis of what's existing in the neighborhood. So the neighborhood is roughly 60% home ownership, and actually the plan itself does really focus in on maintaining that homeownership level. So even as we create new housing, or we make a plan for the creation of new housing rather in Mattapan, we want to see Mattapan as a neighborhood maintain that homeownership level around 60%. No one is saying that the 40 and 60% was not a number that was picked out of thin air. It came from the existing conditions in Mattapan and the data that we started to look at when we began this planning process.
Awesome. The next question is from Chad Fletcher. When you speak about bringing new retailers into Mattapan Square, has there been any studies in terms of annual income of all Mattapan residents to make sure we can all afford the products and services from new retailers, even if they're not big box, quote unquote?
Yes, so I think it was a little challenging for us to do commercial market analysis in Mattapan, or really across the city, mostly due to COVID. It became a challenge for us because the way businesses operated changed completely in a very short amount of time. So for us to do an extensive analysis of what the commercial real estate market would look like in Mattapan, we weren't able to do that. What we are proposing is that in new development, there would be space made available for local and small businesses. As I said earlier, the chief, Chief of Planning, Chief Jemison, is currently working with the Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion to identify other programmatic supports for small and local businesses. That would include making sure that there are spaces that are affordable for commercial retailers. In return, our hope is that those are made affordable or at an income level that is accessible to existing residents. I think at the very top of all of this, we want to make sure that anybody who wants to stay in Mattapan and in their existing home is able to do so. And that includes, what goods and services are nearby, what is the market doing in terms of housing, et cetera.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a few more minutes here. From Alana Feaster, will existing storefronts be updated as well, specifically the facade of the buildings?
I think that's a great question. So the small business unit, as a part of the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, or OEOI, does have an existing program for updating storefronts. I think it's actually called their storefront program. So that is something that already exists and can be leveraged, or it can be used by existing business owners. If you own a business and you're interested in updating your storefront, feel free to contact Kenya and I, and we can get you in touch with the folks who do run that program. But that is something that already exists.
Thank you. Next question is from Cassandra Campbell. Is Plan Mattapan, I don't know what word she tried to use, but is Plan Mattapan to any other plan, analogy to any other plan that has been implemented in the city of Boston? I think that's what she meant. Cassandra, I'm not sure if you're still on the call, but.
Analogous. So it is, in the sense that it's a neighborhood plan, and that we intend to make zoning changes as a result of this planning process. I would say that it does differ from other planning initiatives across the city, in that we were really able to, as a part of this process, we weren't sure what the outcomes would be. We didn't have a preconceived notion. We knew that there would be some zoning changes, but we also had an assumption there would be a lot of programmatic supports needed. That became true. And we really started this conversation with Mattapan residents on really identifying what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the neighborhood. So we did a SWOT analysis, and we really focused in on what are the goals, what are the visions, what are the priorities for the neighborhood before we ever started talking about building heights, corridors, any of that. We really wanted to take our time, understand the community, understand your priorities, and understand the previous planning before we proceeded. I would say that is not to say that our friends who are doing planning initiatives in other neighborhoods aren't doing that. We just took a lot more time to do that because we really needed to better understand what those priorities were. And we weren't so focused in on zoning. There are other supports that are needed.
Awesome. All right. Next is Susan Lombardi-Bercelli's question, and her question is, 52 and 54 and now 58 River Street is an overlay shopping district, neighborhood shopping district, commercial. We're not required to put in mixed use. So will the zoning code change to prevent that?
Can you repeat the question?
So Jared, I looked this up when I saw it in the chat because I thought it was a great question. And so I think when those sites on River Street are sort of at an edge of the planning study that is currently in the Dorchester neighborhood article. And right now, living sort of space, residential uses on the ground floor level are a conditional use in that district. So it's something that can be granted as a use. And based on the surrounding pattern, it sounds like those projects went forward with that conditional use being granted on the project. I think that's an important thing that we're raising as we talk about the recommendations for the corridor here is we're looking for your feedback on the locations, the areas where you think it's really important that we enforce sort of ground floor commercial uses or active uses and where well-designed ground floor residential uses can be appropriate, particularly as we think about River Street. So we would love to get your feedback on, that as we think about the entire corridor.
Awesome.
That's the as of right issue that Susan's talking about. That side of River Street has as of right. So they built anything they want over there pretty much. And that's what Susan's talking about. Where across the street from it, they try to do similar build projects and we're able to, us, Matt, and the other people in the neighborhood are able to reject those proposals. So we've been, I'm sorry for cutting in like this, but the mayor ran on stopping as of rights. And it's still taking place. It's even still taking place in that particular little section there.
Yeah, I think you're getting to a great point, which is that the importance of really looking to make sure we're having the same zoning approach on both sides of the street when we want to have a consistent approach on a corridor. So that's something we'll take a careful look at. I know that Matthew, I saw you sort of saw with the first floor parking, and that's a sort of consistent challenge as we go to update the zoning code. And so something that we're particularly in projects that don't reach larger Article 80 size. So that's something else we can take another look at as we look at these zoning recommendations, knowing that there's examples that have come up with that issue.
Okay.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, so the last question is from Ms. Tamara Sobers. Have you done a study on how people in Mattapan commute? Make sure this is our, yeah. Have you done a study in Mattapan on how people in Mattapan commute to work and school? Learning the average distance traveled, methods of transportation, length of time of a commute if we take public transportation.
We have. I don't have all those numbers off the top of my head either. Sam, if you're still on the line and are able to kind of address the existing condition side of it. We do know though, overall, that Mattapan residents have some of the longest commute times, both to work and school, compared to the rest of the city. Plan Mattapan is focused on bringing goods and services closer to home. So you don't have to travel as far to do that, whether you're walking, driving, or biking. And two, really supporting more efficient transportation options and redesigns so that you are able to get to where you're going a lot faster. The specific numbers of the times, et cetera, I am sorry, I don't remember that off the top of my head, but if Sam's on the line, let's provide a little bit of feedback, it'd be great. If not, I can send over that data.
Okay, thank you. And if you have like, I know it's still early, but if you have a sense of like how much you expect to cut down or cut down time for going certain places, I think that might also help, including that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're at 8:31. I have the remaining questions noted here, so we would make sure to get back to those, the ones we have not had the opportunity to answer this evening. Jared, Fatima, either one of you want to close out?
Yeah, I'm just trying to
I'll let you
figure
go,
out how to stop
Jared.
sharing my screen.
I'm also just combing through the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. So you guys go ahead.
I did save the
just-
chat.
Oh, okay, okay.
Just real quick, I thank you so much to the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council for allowing us to present tonight and use your entire meeting for that purpose. I think this is a great way for us to reach a broader audience and as many people as possible. I also want to reiterate that two things, that this is a draft plan, emphasis on the draft. We are looking for your feedback, again, clear and specific feedback on the plan in order to incorporate that in the final. And then lastly, that we will be out in the neighborhood all of October. We have around 10 plus events scheduled. So this is not your last opportunity. This is not your only opportunity to engage with us about the Plan Mattapan and provide that feedback. So again, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the work that you put into making this plan happen, because we couldn't have done it without you.
I also just want to know, I'm also working on some ways to engage our Haitian residents in Mattapan. I do not want it to be forgotten that we do have the third largest Haitian population in this country. And so I have been working behind the scenes with some of my colleagues on trying to work with some of the Haitian media outlets in the city. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that because they too should have a voice in what happens with this plan. So I also want to share.
Thank you, Councilor Beeman. I mean, thank you, Kenya. Just Councilor.
Yeah. Thank you.
Grateful. So just want to say thank you for making sure that our community, the Haitian community, is included. And good evening, everyone. I didn't want to interrupt when I came on late, but I've been on for the last hour plus, and I just appreciate all the in-depth information that has been shared, and I'm eager to make sure that we get more residents tied in.
Thank you, Fatima, so much. Thank you, everybody. I know you guys are probably sick of me. I've been in probably every meeting known to man.
Never. When have you been hearing this? Not true.
We love you,
I'm a Mattapan resident, born and bred. You know, many of you know me, some of you don't know me, but this is who I am. I remember Mattapan as a young child, and I see a lot has changed over my 45 years, and I'm still looking young, you know. We're gonna keep that.
You got it going on, honey.
So, you know, it's not, you know, lost on me that, you know, whatever changes happen in Mattapan, it's definitely with us in mind. And so I live here too. I want to remain in my mother's home. Okay. I am not looking to be displaced or gentrified out of my community. So just understand, I get it all. I share your thoughts. And so, you know, my email, most of you have my cell phone, call me, send me email, whatever it is, let's talk. Let's, you know, make these things happen in our community. Thank you, Fatima, so much. Thank you, GMNC.
Just so people know before I sign off, one thing that the council we are working on, and this is to about translations. We are looking.
You're frozen, Fatima.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not just for me. Great timing on that. Freeze. Here we go. She's back.
Oh, was I gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were frozen.
Yeah, you were frozen.
Oh, I didn't know. I felt like I was there. I was saying that the GMNC right now, I'm working as chair, I'm working to make sure that we get permanent interpreters for the council, at least first in both Haitian Creole and Spanish. So we'll look to see that hopefully over the next few months that will come to fruition. And that way we can have a higher, more engagement that is even more meaningful. And we can have some more cross-cultural, cross-language interpretation going on here. Anyways, absolutely.
Just quickly.
Yes.
There were a couple of times I think Kenya had or someone had meetings totally in Haitian Creole. And it was us who were out of the loop. Like we sat through the meeting like, you know, I don't know what y'all are talking about. We should do the same thing. Like there should be a Haitian meeting, Creole speaking meeting that we're not, the English speakers are the ones left out of the conversation. I think we should do that, and Spanish, and leave us out. And I know Jared may not speak Creole or Spanish, but you know, somehow we should try to do that so that the whole presentation is done as a primary and we are the ones getting the interpretation. We should do that.
That's not a problem. We can flip the script.
Let me know. Working with Z on some outlets. It was actually us, my idea when we were in the process of the planning, and we had literally all Haitian planned Mattapan meeting. I mean, nothing was in English, legit. You know, we made sure we wanted to incorporate our Haitian residents. So if you want to do this again, let me know. I've been working with Lucy's
Sure.
team. I got some outlets, so things are brewing.
Sure. Who, you know, whatever is best to move forward. That's all that matters. Oh, Councilor here, you have your hand raised.
Yes, sorry, my name was under Sarah Lawton for a while there, so I wasn't sure.
No, I didn't see you. Sorry.
Okay, but I wanted to just thank the administration in Kenya for briefing us prior to this. So it was really great to see the amount of time and energy that has gone into community engagement. And I would like to underscore, as we continue to go through this process, when we're thinking about changing zoning and adopting, and I think some of that is also going to, we're going to have to give some thought in terms of like the community engagement process, because if things are going to be changing, there's going to be a need for community to understand those changes, so that when things are being presented, there's some time that has been allotted for a complete understanding of how things have changed around zoning and things of that nature. So would just kind of uplift that as something to ensure that we continue to move with in mind. And I do appreciate the whole language interpretation and access. And I also think that while this is such a great space because all of the amazing leaders are here, and you already know how you all are, you organize like nobody's business. I think that there's also an opportunity to get into the barbershops, into the local businesses, doing some robocalls whenever there's going to be community meetings, so that we can continue to ensure that we're trying to reach as many people as possible as we continue through this plan. So thank you for allowing me to say hello and to say a few words.
You're most welcome. And Vivian Ortiz, you got the last word of the evening, my dear.
Something really quick. Thank you so much for bringing up the topic of having meetings in the language that the folks are most comfortable in, but with also on the flip side of that, because interpretation speaking, but also having some of the information translated so that we can have some written documents with some really basic information, because a lot of it was spoken about tonight. I think that a large majority of us are comfortable with English, but even some of the terminology, and I'm not even meaning the acronyms, but just even what those concepts mean, to be able to define those things and be able to have some glossaries, but also have them in the other languages, because just having a meeting in a different, in Haitian Creole or in Spanish, but not understanding the concepts is not as effective as it could be. So, and I would love to be part of any of the planning for the Spanish speaking meetings that we're looking forward to doing in the future.
Oh, don't worry, my friend. I'll be checking on you.
Fatima, I'm sorry, Dane had his hand up and I mistakenly lowered it, thinking it was from like a while ago. I don't know if he is still on the call. Dane, are you still on here?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go.
I'm still here, yes. Can you hear me?
All right, Dane,
Can you hear me?
you shall have the real last word.
Yes, my bad.
The real last word? Oh man,
You
I'm
get
all
the-
sorts of privileged. Good evening, everyone. So just to open up my thoughts real quick, there was a lot of response to one of the questions about not targeting Mattapan, and I think the ideas presented in the plan are great and sounds like the community input's going to be weighed very carefully. But in the immediate, my question is, what is going to be done to protect Mattapan, and especially in targeted areas? And I'm referring to, I believe the address is 1476 Blue Hill Ave, right on the corner of Culbert and Woodhaven. And what I mean by protect is protect
1471.
Mattapan from 1471, thank you, from egregious, I mean, woefully egregious development that is not developmentally appropriate for the neighborhood, where in often cases, and this one in particular that's cited in the Universal Hub, where a developer seems to be, I don't know if it's willfully or inadvertently, trying to the community vetting process, where they've been gone as far as to announce a hearing date of October 31st without any neighborhood corroboration or feedback or anything. And if you look at the drawing, I mean, it's a 5-story monstrosity that I don't know how the houses that are surrounding it would survive from a development perspective. I don't want to go into too much details about the project, but that is just one case in point. So to the extent that, you know, our neighborhood can rally and fight for it and preserve what is, you know, in our best interest. Go ahead. Somebody wants to respond to that? Go ahead.
No, you're in and out. Go ahead and finish.
I think it was just your voice was coming kind of crackly. I think that's what it was.
But let me just jump in because I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because Dane, I did get your email.
Please.
So I am going to respond to your email tomorrow. Maybe we could set some time up to chat. But they are going through an Article 80 process. And so there has to be a community process for this project. So they're not like skipping through this and going right into, you know, getting a building permit to put this project up. That's not how this works. So although I know it's out there, they did send a letter of intent for this project, which means a comment period is now up on the BPDA website for any and all those who have seen it in Universal Hub or via email to make a comment on our website about this project, good, bad, or indifferent. However, though, they got a long way to go before they get to anything, you know, before they get to even breaking any sort of ground whatsoever. And so a community process is still needed for this project. So Dane, I will reach, did we lose him? Oh, okay. I will reach out to you and we will chat more in detail about it, but the entire community will hear more about this, but it'll be a while.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. Thank you, Fatima, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. It is now almost 8:45. I thank you again, everyone who came on and stayed on past the time. All of your thoughts and comments are most welcome, and we have a lot of work to do now that we have to start again. So again, I love you all, but you gotta go. So ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Night. Night, guys.
Good
Night, guys. Good night.
Thank
Work
you.
it
Good
too.
night,
everyone.
Good
Night,
night.
everyone.
Thank you. Night.
You're welcome.
Ingrid is
Thank you guys for
here.
coming.
Night, Alana.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Night, night.
Oh, can you stay on?